1. New York halts offshore wind transmission amid federal uncertainty. 2. NYC offshore wind power halted. What's next for clean energy? 3. New York's wind power goals, challenges and future prospects. 1. New York halts offshore wind transmission amid federal uncertainty. In a bold move that has sent shockwaves through the renewable energy sector, New York State has put a temporary hold on its ambitious offshore wind transmission plans. This decision, made by the New York State Public Service Commission, is a direct response to the current federal uncertainty surrounding offshore wind permitting. The Commission has halted its public policy transmission need process, which was aimed at securing proposals for up to 8 gigawatts of offshore wind power for New York City by 2033. This move is designed to protect state ratepayers from the financial burden of premature infrastructure investments, given the recent federal actions that have put a pause on new offshore wind leasing and permitting. While this might seem like a setback, New York's commitment to offshore wind remains steadfast. Existing projects such as the South Fork Wind Farm, Empire Wind, and Sunrise Wind are still moving forward without interruption. This pause, however, raises questions about the future of renewable energy in the United States. As Hillary Bright, Executive Director of Turn Forward, a non-profit organization dedicated to advancing offshore wind power, points out, shovel-ready offshore wind projects are poised to add major capacity to the U.S. grid just when it's needed most. Experts are warning that the U.S. could soon face a power shortfall due to the increasing energy demands from AI, cryptocurrency, and other digital economy sectors. This halt in planning is not a permanent stop, but rather a strategic move to reassess and ensure that future projects are affordable, reliable, and risk-reduced. The Commission has instructed its staff to apply the lessons learned from this process to future planning efforts, with a focus on these key areas. The question remains, will this temporary pause in offshore wind transmission plans spark a broader conversation about the future of renewable energy in the U.S.? And how will the U.S. balance its need for renewable energy with the current federal uncertainty? Join the conversation and share your thoughts in the comments. 2. NYC offshore wind power halted. What's next for clean energy? In a significant turn of events, the New York Public Service Commission, PSC, has put a halt to a multi-billion-dollar project aimed at bringing offshore wind energy to New York City. This decision stems from concerns regarding the construction of costly power lines that may not be necessary in the near future. The PSC's action is a direct response to an executive order issued by President Trump, which calls for a suspension of new offshore wind projects and a review of existing wind energy leases. Despite this setback, the Commission remains dedicated to achieving clean energy objectives and plans to collaborate with the New York Independent System Operator, NYISO, and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, to explore new, cost-effective, and reliable energy solutions. On Thursday, the PSC announced its decision to cease the offshore wind project, emphasizing that this move is intended to shield New Yorkers from incurring costs for power lines that may not be utilized in the foreseeable future. As a result, the PSC is retracting its Public Policy Transmission Need (PPTN) determination made in 2023, which had outlined the need for new power lines capable of delivering at least 4,770 megawatts of offshore wind energy to the city by 2033. Rory Christian, the chair of the PSC, stated, "One of our most important tasks is to protect consumers. We will continue to advocate for the necessary infrastructure for offshore wind in the future, once the federal government resumes leasing and permitting for wind energy projects." The NYISO, which oversees the state's electric grid, had initiated a search for companies to construct these power lines on April 4, 2024, receiving 28 proposals from 4 different firms, with estimated costs ranging from $7.9 billion to $23.9 billion. However, President Trump's executive order, issued in January, has effectively halted any new construction or permits for offshore wind projects, leading the PSC to conclude that achieving New York's offshore wind targets is now unattainable in the near term, thus negating the rationale for building new power lines. The PSC determined that it would be imprudent to burden New Yorkers with billions of dollars in costs for power lines that would remain unused for an extended period. Just a day prior to the PSC's announcement, a coalition of organizations, including the Alliance for Clean Energy New York, the New York Offshore Wind Alliance, and several utility companies, sent a letter to Christian urging the PSC not to delay its decision on the PPTN until the NYISO completes a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis. They highlighted the ongoing necessity for power lines connecting to offshore wind, the critical nature of reliable energy, and the potential financial implications of further postponements. The coalition argued that the federal moratorium on wind farm permits should not extend to transmission lines. Chris Casey, the Utility Regulatory Director for New York at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, expressed disappointment over the PSC's decision, viewing it as a missed opportunity. He pointed out that studies conducted by the PSC have demonstrated the urgent need for new wind power lines into New York City, particularly given the limited space available for new cables in New York Harbor due to physical and regulatory constraints. The NRDC advocates for the state to complete the NYISO review, select the most viable project, and seek approvals to proceed swiftly once federal obstacles are removed. Casey emphasized that a power line linking multiple offshore wind farms to the city represents one of the few feasible pathways for advancing the state's climate goals in downstate areas while reducing dependence on fossil fuel power plants that contribute to air pollution and disproportionately affect low-income and minority communities. Similarly, the New York League of Conservation voters expressed their dismay, urging the state to enhance its commitment to clean energy rather than slow it down, especially in light of a federal government that they believe is undermining progress in this area. They warned that without new power lines, New York risks failing to meet its clean energy objectives, which could lead to higher costs in the long run. By postponing action now, we are jeopardizing our clean energy transition and potentially increasing future expenses, stated the NYCLV. They contended that continuing with the transmission plan would provide developers and communities with the assurance of cleaner and more reliable energy sources. Energy company Viridin New York echoed these sentiments, cautioning that indecision could send a negative signal throughout the market and hinder the state's renewable energy ambitions. They argued that the NYC PPTN would benefit from decoupling the development of power lines from the construction of wind farms. Viridin estimated that the initial costs for planning and permitting the PPTN would amount to a few $100 million over the first 4 years, representing a mere fraction, around 1%, of the tens of billions required to ultimately construct at least 4,770 megawatts of offshore wind energy and deliver it to New York City. Despite the current challenges, the PSC reaffirmed its commitment to clean energy goals and plans to collaborate with NYISO and NYSERDA to identify new, affordable, and reliable solutions. These initiatives will be included in the upcoming Clean Energy Standard Biennial Review scheduled for 2026. Originally, the 2023 determination aimed to achieve climate targets of 9 gigawatts from wind energy by 2035. However, the PSC noted that without federal certainty, they cannot determine the appropriate design or plans for the power lines, making it impossible to establish a timeline for implementation and leading to uncertain cost estimates. 3. New York's wind power goals, challenges and future prospects. New York's ambitious wind power dreams are on the brink of collapse, and it's all thanks to a political storm brewing in Washington. But here's the shocking truth. The state's energy regulator has declared these goals impossible in the near term, leaving many to wonder if the future of renewable energy is being blown off course. In a surprising turn of events, the New York State Public Service Commission announced on Thursday that plans for constructing vital transmission lines, which had been in development for 2 years, are now on hold. The reason? The Commission points to the significant federal uncertainty caused by former President Donald Trump's decision to pause permits for offshore wind projects. This move has effectively stalled the state's progress in harnessing the power of wind. The original plan was to establish transmission lines capable of delivering offshore wind energy to power up to 5 million homes in the downstate region by 2033. Public Service Commissioner Rory Christian assured the public that they remain committed to offshore wind infrastructure, stating, "We will resume our efforts once the federal government reopens leasing and permitting for wind energy projects." And this is the part most people miss. The Commission's decision, described as a strategic termination of the transmission infrastructure process, doesn't provide a clear timeline for when these plans might be revived. This uncertainty leaves New York's renewable energy future hanging in the balance. The regulator's action, they claim, safeguards New York taxpayers from incurring premature infrastructure costs. However, this perspective is not without controversy. Advocates argue that the state should maintain its momentum in preparing for a wind-powered future. Chris Casey, representing the Natural Resources Defense Council, expressed concern, stating, "Halting the process now is a missed opportunity that could set us back years." New York should be leading the charge, not retreating, in the development of this crucial and cost-effective resource. Here's where it gets even more contentious. While permitted offshore wind projects remain unaffected, other initiatives like the renewable Ravenswood project, aiming to transform NYC's largest power plant into a green energy center, face further setbacks. This raises questions about the state's ability to meet its renewable energy targets. New York's struggle with its renewable energy transition goals predates the Trump administration. The state's climate law aimed for 70% renewable energy by 2030, but a recent report revealed a 3-year delay in achieving this objective. With the current federal obstacles, the path forward seems even more challenging. Casey suggests a different approach, urging the state to continue low-cost, high-value work, such as completing cost-benefit analyses and advancing state-level approvals, to ensure New York is ready to act when federal barriers are lifted. As the debate over New York's wind power future intensifies, one thing is clear: the state's energy landscape is at a crossroads. Should New York persist in its preparations for a wind-powered future, or is the current pause a necessary step to avoid unnecessary costs? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with the state's decision, or do you side with the advocates pushing for continued progress? Let us know in the comments below, and let's spark a discussion that could shape the future of renewable energy in New York.